The purpose of this, this short piece this afternoon is a time for both personal and professional reflection. A time to share what we've learned over the course of these last 2 days. As Minister Yap mentioned, it was quite a 48-hour period. I know over the course of the weekend, there will be times where I will smile and laugh, and these wrinkles will be accentuated. But I should also say that over the course of the next couple days, I'll be grinding my teeth. And that's good, because some things were said, some things were shared today and yesterday that will cause me to think, and to think very hard, and also cause me to get quite emotional, be very happy, be very angry. But as Maggie also said earlier today, it will cause me to continue on this journey. So I want to thank you very much for that. To my left, do you mind if I start as my far left? Okay. We have Rachel Blaney. Pauline Goertzen. Nirmal Parmar. And Jorge Salazar. We're going to start by asking each and every one of them to share a minute or two, some of their reflections, some of their learning, and in the course of that also tell us a little bit about themselves, because the other, I think, great advantage of the 48 hours, the last 2 days, is that not only have I met, and I'll be quite personal about this, not only have I caught up with people that I know very well, and maybe I've not seen them for quite a while, but I've also met some very interesting, wonderful, new people in my life. And again, I thank you very much for that. If it's okay with you, Jorge, I might start with you. No? Is it okay? Okay. We did talk a bit about this now.
Rock, paper, scissors. Okay. I'm gonna start by saying that I came to Canada about 11 years ago from Colombia. So I still, every time I get to speak, I say I'm from Colombia. I'm also Canadian. And I'm going to start by maybe asking, how many of you like being asked, where are you from? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you, that's okay. Now, how many of you don't like being asked, where are you from? Okay. So we don't have very much time to talk about this. And I'm going to tell you, I'm in both places. And I love being asked where I am from, here. But when I'm in the SkyTrain on the streets and the cops ask me where I'm from, I say I'm Canadian. And somehow I am finding this, and I think it speaks very much to the dynamics of racism that we're talking about. The truth is that when I'm in a place where I know my culture is going to be respected, there's going to be honor, and people will have an honest and transparent interest on really knowing who I am without putting me down, I will be open with them. But if there is a lot of space for me to be judged, put down, discriminated against, I will not tell them the other place that I'm from, because I'm not going to let them hurt me. So I don't tell, when I've been stopped by the police in the streets, I don't tell them that I'm from Colombia. Only once I did that, and I didn't like the outcome. So I think that's very much is informed a lot of my work. A lot of my work has to do with supporting processes where communities, wherever they're from, are included in processes, particularly if they are coming from marginalized communities. And that, for many years, I worked with diverse communities, probably queer communities, people in the streets, and people from indigenous communities. In the last few years, I've been focusing my work around immigrant and refugee people. So that's kind of where I've been working mostly. And I think that, I use a lot of my experience with that, but I also a lot of people's stories and people's connections and relationships to be able to build on that. So that's a little bit of myself. Do I get to speak a little bit of the conference or not yet?
Why don't we do a quick intro? Since we're done intros, let's do a quick intro. Nirmal. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Nirmal Parmar. I'm from Cheras, British Columbia. It's a northwest part of the province where I come from. First of all, I like to recognize the territory of Coast Salish First Nation lands, and also the territory I come from is the Tsimshian lands. I've been living there for the last 43 years. And on behalf of all the Tsimshian elders, my Tsimshian friends, and all the practitioners, and all the volunteers, and all the people who work and deliver the programs to improve the life and multiculturalism and stop the racism in that part of the world, I bring you greetings. In greetings, I will say, Ema Sa. Ema Sa, in Tsimshian language, means, in plain English, good afternoon. And I think I'll take only this much time. You can go ahead.
Thank you, Nirmal. Pauline.
Hello, hello. My name is Pauline Goertzen, and I'm from Burns Lake, a little place way up north. And I've been working with the province for about 15 years, back when they used to call it B Camp. Does anyone remember when it was called B Camp? Yeah. So I've seen a lot of changes and a lot of things go on in both the provincial network, federal networks. That's when Heritage Canada used to work really closely with us. And so today was really special for me because it's the first time I've seen the ability for us to come together like this in all that time. And also a lot of discussion and skills. And I'll talk more about it as we go on. But I think there's something very special that happened here at this conference, and I want to know if people are experiencing the same thing as far as being in this type of work for as long as I have been. And so I'm going to stop there for now.
Thank you, Pauline.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Rachel Blaney, and I run a multicultural association in Campbell River and in the Comox Valley, and I've been in the sector for 5 years. And this is a personal sharing about who we are. And one of my favorite stories to tell about who I am and my family was that it was the summer before I turned 9 that I found out that I was not an Indian. And how I didn't notice that I was the only blonde, blue-eyed person in the family is kind of an interesting story. But my father told me at that point that I was not his biological child, and I had grown up surrounded in an Aboriginal community with aunties and uncles and brothers and a sister and a father. And it was a big moment for me. And it wasn't even concern about who my biological father was. My real concern was, do I still belong to this group of people? And so I think one of the important things that we learned and we know in the work that we do is that our identity is always changing. And one of the hardest parts about doing the work that we do is everything around racism, everything around multiculturalism never stays the same. It's always changing, and we're always learning to respond to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. So let's get started. A reflection, a learning, Jorge. Rachel?
Oh my goodness, the pressure is on. I think I learned a lot, and I think one of the things that I really learned from this was how diverse the needs are across the province. There's a lot of people that are working in isolation, and I think that's across the province, trying to do their best. And I really respect some of the voices that I heard about the disconnection and the sense that we're working so hard, and things don't seem to always get better the way that we want them to. And I was really fascinated by the idea that we need to really work with multiculturalism and what that word actually means. Is that the right word? is the understanding of mosaic something that makes sense for us and what we do? And again, it's always that part where you can't put your finger on it. If you try to put your finger on it, it moves again, and so we're constantly moving with it. And I know that at the end of the day, what really needs to happen and what we are doing, which is so powerful, and I commend all of the people who do that work in their community, is we're making spaces for stories. We're making spaces for people to learn, and sometimes bringing in people who don't know those stories that really need to hear those stories. It's hard work, but we really have to be strategic about making it a reality. And I just think of my granny who went to residential school from 3 to 16. And I just think about, when I found out that I wasn't biologically belonging to that family, but they made me belong in every other way that was important, was my granny used to always say to me, "Oh, honey, you're going to be just fine. You're going to be just fine." And then as an adult to realize the reason she was saying that to me was because I was white and blue-eyed and blonde-haired. And at the time, I just thought she was being a loving person. So those are important stories because it really teaches us who we are as Canadians, who we are as community members, and who we need to engage so that those stories can be heard. Thank you,
Rachel. Anyone else have something to share? Pauline?
Right now?
Sure. Go ahead.
Well, I think that as we move in this work in the province and look at the communities, and I think that the opportunity for stories and for people to find a way to engage and trust the process with their community members that want to move it forward. What I heard this morning too from the panel that talked about their own community was just how much trust and work went into one incident. And I think that as we, and from, I don't know if from last night's meeting as well, I could feel the amount of competency in the room, the amount of, I guess, the need for continuity, but also for autonomy in being able to go into our work into the communities, be supported, be resourced, and also know that there's a way to share. When I was asked to come and be on this advisory committee, I was actually kind of surprised because in the North, we don't have the opportunity. We feel marginalized as well doing the work because we are literally alone. We've had an opportunity through our Aura networks, which we're also looking at how to sustain that. But we've had the opportunity to learn about one another from a highway, from Vanderhoof to Prince Rupert, and how we can support one another. That's been a growing process in our own way. But now it's how do we link up to a larger system and to resources and skills and process that can help our small communities without feeling like we're alone. And so what I've also felt from this conference was, and which has been different because I've never been part of immigrant or settlement services in our community. We've never had that. We've only done anti-racism and multiculturalism, was that we don't have a consistent flow or a consistent stream of funding to do services. So we literally, once it's done, you could just keep working for free, which is okay, because you're the one who's trusted to do that. But I think that one of the things that I've noticed, and I haven't seen before, was the acknowledgement that First Nations belong in this new, like you're saying, this changing mosaic in a different way and included in our work and acknowledged that the issues are across community and that they are to be part of and included in this new whatever is morphing out of even conferences and discussions like this today, which is really important to our communities. So I look forward to hearing and if we get a chance for some interactive discussion about what people feel about the changing process in the next while.
Thank you, Pauline. Thank you.
I was looking at that booklet that we have here. It has, for this panel, lessons learned from Symposium. It's a very tall order. Mm-hmm. We hardly in half an hour or maybe many hours can really talk about that. But in a very few minutes, I want to put together two things: my own experience and what I gathered or learned in last 2 days. I start with my own experience. I did not mention what I did earn my living or my work life. My work life spanned for 42 years. Out of 42 years, I was a classroom instructor or teacher, teaching in elementary school, in a high school, in the college for 30 years. And another 12 years, I was accounting and office manager. And those 30 years, when I started off in elementary school, I always look for things to put on the walls for the students to make my room more appealing, more educational-centered place. In search of those visual things, I think it was either 1975 or 76, I found a poster in one of the shops in bookstores in Vancouver. It was so captivating, and I'm going to share that poster with you today. In 50s and 60s, before the minivan became part of our lives, there used to be station wagons. Station wagons, there has no seat belts. There's a bench seat in front, a bench seat in the back, and a whole bunch of room in the back, which you can open the back door and throw all your stuff in there. And you can put all the kids, 6 kids, 5 kids, 8 kids, whatever, no problem. And this poster has the back door open, and back side was in this poster. An English word, belong, means when you belong to somebody, when you're related to somebody. And so is belonging. But when you add the word S to it, belongings, that becomes your stuff, your suitcase, your sleeping bag, your grocery, whatever. So what do you put in the back of the station wagon? Your belongings. Whenever you go shopping or whatever, you travel, you put your all stuff in the back. But this poster did not have stuff in the back. It has more than a half a dozen puppies of different breed, of different color, smiling, all snug together, very tightly. And there's a caption at the bottom of this poster: belonging is much better than belongings. Follow me? Belong to each other is much better than belongings or the suitcase or whatever. And I had this poster in my class. Every time I switched the room, I never left it behind. All those years, even when I moved to college, where I taught for 15 years, I always have this poster in my class. And even today, my son is a high school teacher in Port Alberni, is still hanging in his classroom. There's a message in it. We have to learn to belong to somebody. We have to have a relationship with people. Message from puppies. Those beautiful animals, to us, most intelligent species on this planet, that look, you fools, if you want to be happy like us, belong to somebody. Develop a relationship with somebody like us. Because we are together, we are different colors, we are different breeds, but we are happy. This is the point I want to share, because this relationship, a very keynote speaker in one of the events in Chess, he mentioned the real balance in life will come when we have a relationship with everything in our life, with the land, with the forest, with the mountain, with the trees, with the environment, with ecology, with everything, with our neighbor next door to us, neighbor down the street, whatever. We have to have the relationship. But what is the foundation of the relationship? What's the bedrock of this relationship? is the mutual respect. The only way any relationship can succeed, it has to have the mutual respect between the individuals. As soon as we live in a free democracy, free speech is a blessing. But if it is contaminated with distrust, disrespect, it becomes venom, poison. Look what happened the last few weeks. Some person in California made this little movie which hurt our Muslim brothers and sisters. It called mayhem all over the globe. What happened? This individual did not show the proper respect in his or her work. Same that cartoon maker in France. So what's the point of my little thing is the mutual respect and the relationship with mutual respect is the most important thing. And what we learned from this 2-day symposium, the big thing was youth are the key. We always talk about this. This is a theme which was repeated again and again and again. We said they are the one who will bring about the real change. We cannot ignore the youth. Get them involved. Help them to do what we have been doing. We won't be on this planet forever. So let the torch pass on to the younger generation. That's very important. I have one more thing to say. One speaker mentioned Stephen Point, who is just retiring, Honorable Stephen Point, our Lieutenant Governor. His quote, "We are all in this canoe together, let's paddle together." It's not for me or you or him or him. If we're gonna get from point A to point B, we'll get together, otherwise we're all gonna drown together if we are not working together. And this is a big thing. Just from this elder, Stephen Point, that it's not you, First Nation, it's not you, Eastern European, it's not you, South Asian or South American. No, it's a one canoe, and we are all in it. And name of that canoe is Canada. And to make Canada a better Canada, we all have to paddle together.
Thank you, Mr. Parmar. Thank you.
And the last thing, and the last thing, I think the last thing I saw before we went away, this is this young lady from India, it's a big writer, Arundhati Roy. She said, another world is not only possible, she's on her way. On a quiet day, I can hear her breathing. My friends, I can hear her breathing. So must you, all of you, can hear her breathing. Thank you.
Perfect segue, Jorge, passing the torch.
Thank you. I'll try to be brief, although I have like 10 more points than he does. I'm joking. I actually don't. But I do have 4 points, and at the end, I want to leave the comment with one practical suggestion for us in this conversation around cultures. I also forgot to mention where I work or what I do. So I do contract work and facilitator, stuff like that, mostly to do with training on facilitation, anti-oppression, power dynamics, etc. But right now, what I'm working on mostly is with a group of young people, all immigrant refugees themselves, to go around the province asking other immigrant refugee young people how the provincial government should change. So that's what we're working on right now. We cannot go everywhere. We have very limited budget, but Thankfully, we're supported by the Vancouver Foundation and the BC Representative for Children and Youth. So that gives us quite a bit of access, because access is a big issue for the immigrant refugee people. I don't think there is one space before this where immigrants and refugees could just come as immigrants and refugees. We always get we go as in the settlement sector, it's a lot more open-ended. This is specifically for immigrant refugee youth, but there's a lot of conversations there around allyship and how we need to work with everybody. And actually, I'm gonna make a point about that in my point. So that's my work. People can get through me through Carmen and whoever. Feel free to share my phone, my address, everything is all good. So I'm gonna make like 3 or 4 points from things that I heard, but I actually is gonna talk more about what I didn't hear for what I heard. And I'm gonna start with the concept around cultural navigation that Aldon brought to us. And although I found that concept to be very strong for people who really need their individuality respected, that in my perception, I felt that had a very strong argument to ensure that people who have many different identities and processes need to be respected. Why do you have to ask them the one box of one culture you're from? I don't think that works, and I felt that had a strong point. At the same time, I also felt that it invisibilized people who do have very strong cultural roots. And the truth is that, because the truth is that I actually don't think that all cultures are being respected and honored. I think some cultures are not being respected and honored, and that's a root to the issue of what we're talking about. And if we don't see the examples, and I think, and I go to this because I felt that sometimes some of his points were when he brought this and some people brought the conversation of racism and oppression as if it was a historical item. I think it's very present, and I think that's what we're here today, is that we're talking about racism here today and right on our faces. How many of us have been in Whistler? I party pretty hard there. I don't know, you. Whistler. Yeah? The resort. Okay, good. So you all know how temporary workers are treated, right? Right, do we know? And I don't know if you're getting my sarcasm, so I'm going to explain. Is that when we look at racism, let's look at how Mexican, Indian, and Filipino temporary workers are being treated in farms today. How are they being treated? And let's talk about how the Whistler temporary workers from New Zealand and Australia are being treated today. Those people party pretty good, and they get access to a lot of discounts for the equipment and snowboarding and all those things. So the issue of racism is very present. Oh, let's talk about how boats still come to our shores and we treat them as terrorists. Like in this day and age, we should not allow one comment about our people being terrorists. That is disgraceful. Our people being called terrorists today, and we create policy around that issue. So I think it's very strong in our communities, and we internalize this, and our people then start saying, yeah, that we need to deal with these issues of racism because, we need to create all these patterns, all these issues because, there's some immigrants who are bad, or there's some immigrants who are terrorists, or there's some fake refugees. So then, of course, our communities are divided and all these things, so very strong. So that's my first point, the importance for us to understand racism today and how we allow this space to really divide our people and affect our people today. The second thing has to do also with this idea of racism and oppression, stuff like that, is that if I was, I don't know, but for example, one of the, most of my teachings and a lot of the learnings, I learned a lot from the indigenous people, from this land and from many lands. Indigenous people teach me a lot, and we really need to see how to get those learnings. But I also learned a lot from the women's movement and the importance of having to learn from the women's movement. And one thing that I've learned is that if I'm gonna go to a conference to talk about women's issues, and as a man, I think if I'm gonna be speaking, I need to be speaking on how, as a man, I'm being part of the sexist system. And I don't know, yes, and well, you can applaud about this next comment that I'm gonna make, but the next one is that I have not heard many of you, and all our friends here who are our allies here, I have not heard many of the white people here speaking on anti-racism on how you're part of the racist systems. And I mean, and in my work, Anti-Oppression 101 is that if you're a heterosexual person, you're very much part of the homophobic systems. If you're a man, you're very much part of the sexist systems. If you're a white person, you're very much part of the racist systems. And how much or no we take part on that system is a different conversation. And that's when we talk about allyship. And I have I have very little heard about allyship, or how we actually can build bridges of solidarity between different communities. And that's why actually yesterday in the conversations of the practitioners, that somebody said, where are the immigrants here, or the different cultures, different communities? And I think that's a very important question, because in our work, we don't really ask for that to be present. And it's important for that to be present because, to be honest, and to go even deeper, we are all part of the colonial process. We're going to be talking in solidarity with indigenous brothers and sisters and all our friends in the sector. We are all part of the colonial process today. I mean, how much we want to be or are not actually part of that is a different conversation. But our communities today, I mean, we think about the settlement sector, we come in here to settle. And that's also just part of the cycles of what's happening to this land. And we need to respect that history. So, and I don't know how many, see, I told you wouldn't applaud for that next comment. And almost to just the last comment, the last point before I get the last suggestion is that there was one comment around, for Aldo, and actually a couple of people mentioned this, the relationship between racism and class. And I think that's so big, because in the patterns that we're really working on, I mean, we do need to move on from some conversations on racism. We do need to move from conversations on the mosaic or multiculturalism, however you want to call it, but we really need to figure out what other dynamics and patterns of oppression or systemic exclusion affects us all. And these continue, and I think that's, and then going back to the example of Whistler and the farms in Abbotsford or Chilliwack or Kelowna, like it is very telling who gets the pie or who doesn't get, or very little the pie. And at the end of the day, I know all the people working here, we all really working really hard, and I can only imagine now Jorge comes and he puts all these other layers of issues we have to handle, and we thought we had enough. We thought we had enough to handle. But I'm going to tell you, we can handle it all. We can handle it all. And you know, I came as a refugee, and we broke and all that stuff, and we still, we can do it, but we do need to have those frank, explicit conversations. Those frank and explicit conversations, they are not always comfortable. I am a little scared of what I'm saying, but I say anyways, hoping that you know this is coming from my heart, and from a really strong interest to work with you all. This is the interest to work with you all, and by you all I mean you all, from the government sector, from the private sector, NGOs, immigrant communities, wherever you're coming from. We need to work together, but we also need to talk to each other about our differences. So it goes very much, and I'm wrapping up, it goes very much to this conversation. I really like the title of the event, Embracing Difference. But let's talk about that difference, because that difference is what has created all these layers of oppression and exclusion, and we need to really, really talk about them and embrace them. We're not talking about the difference to tell them, oh, they suck, they suck. I mean, sometimes you need to, which is part of the issue in the sector. Sometimes we do need to say when something sucks, but we don't always say it. Oh man, I just used a mini word. Anyway, so to wrap, and in the idea of differences, for many years ago, I was doing a lot of work with indigenous people in the province, and I remember actually yesterday, Wade Grant was mentioning how a lot of Germans love natives here. They get a lot of speaking, and they get invited to Germany, and I was really finding out about that. And they told, and then one day I was asking one of the person who gets invited to Germany a lot, and he said to me, he's like, Jorge, no, I think we get invited a lot there because they're really trying to figure out their identity and the cultural process. And one way to figure out your identity and your cultural process is by knowing another culture, like finding another culture that's very strong, that really helps you define yourself as well. So here's my last comment is that, you know what, for us to really define multiculturalism and for us to identify ourselves as Canadians, we need to travel. So go away, go to another country. Hopefully, a country that is not a Commonwealth, is not part of the Commonwealth sector. Go to a different country where you don't speak English, it's not part of the Commonwealth sector, and you're gonna learn how much you're Canadian or not. And you're gonna be able to absorb some of these patterns of different cultures, and you're really gonna face yourself with which part of power and privilege, and with dynamics of oppression. It's a really humbling experience. And don't go into a resort. I mean, because don't go to a resort. That's the other thing. So that's the example. Like, example, if we're really interested in this multiculturalism thing, one place, for example, I would suggest, I would go to Bolivia. I would go to Bolivia, and Bolivia is basing all their policy right now on this concept of pluriculturalism. And it's mostly because they're recognizing the patterns of colonization, recognizing all the indigenous cultures. I don't know much about the policy, but the concept itself is important for us to learn from. So those are my 2 cents from the 2 days, boss.